I've had my car for 3 months now. I've been driving it daily, so it's time for my 3-month review. I took delivery on March 18th of 2023. And so this was a 2023 Lucid Air Touring. I remember when I first saw this car, my wife and I were coming out of a restaurant in Hollywood, and we were getting ready to pick up our car from valet parking, and someone was coming out of valet parking headed toward us. And this was a gold car. And it was mesmerizing. And both my wife and I, we were looking at this car as it passed by us and thinking, what in the world is this? And you could see Lucid on the back of it. So, I had to go home and start researching what is a Lucid. And from that point forward, I did a ton of research. I talked to a studio associate at Lucid time and time again. I would go there and sit with this guy and talk for an hour about the Lucid, about the company. And I finally decided I'm going to go ahead and put my deposit down. And about a year later, I had my car. During that process, when I first really went to the studio and looked at the car, it was beautiful. The only concern I had was the trunk. It was not normal. I can't even remember what they call the style of trunk it is, but it just wasn't normal. And I was concerned my wife wasn't gonna like it. So I had her come back with me another time, and she took a look at the car. We opened the trunk, and she loved the trunk. It shocked me that she was like, "Yeah, this is bomb. I'm cool." So that kind of gave me the thumbs up. I can go ahead and order this car. The other thing is, at the time, the Grand Touring hadn't been released yet. The Touring was something off in the future. They had some dates when it might become available, but, I just wasn't sure. The Grand Touring came out, and I was trying to resist taking a test drive because I had ordered a Touring. But, I kept watching video after video, seeing all these tweets on Twitter, and decided, man, I can't resist anymore. I got to go take a Grand Touring for a test drive. And it was probably the most unbelievable drive I had ever taken in a car. So, I waited for the Touring to come out. And I was a little bit nervous about that because at that point I had only saw a Grand Touring, which had all this Alcantara and had the massage seats. By the way, Lucid, y'all should have put massage seats in the Touring. It's ridiculous to have a car that expensive without massage seats. But I digress. Anyways, so we were a little bit nervous about what that one was going to look like. And since I had seen the Grand Touring up close and personal. So when they finally had that at a Beverly Hills studio, my wife and I went to there, and we sat in the Touring, and we thought, man, this is super luxurious as well. Even though it doesn't have as much Alcantara, we actually liked the leather. We were missing the massage seats, but everything else was just as beautiful as the Grand Touring. And especially in the rear seats, you actually got more room for your feet. So we were sold. When my reservation comes due, I'm going to get this car. The last thing I'll say kind of in this opening statement is just that I knew what I was getting into, right? This is a car from a new company. This is their first automobile. There's going to be some issues that are going to have to be worked through. And that was for me, the allure of this. I was excited about that. I knew that there were going to be some bumps along the road. I knew that Lucid is a new company, and they're far from being profitable. But, after doing all the due diligence in this company, I really felt like the direction of Lucid was something that if you were patient enough, it would pay off in the long run. So I was willing to go ahead and buy this car and see what happens. So I'm going to talk about, what I like about the car, what things I think that need to be improved. So, just stay tuned and I'm gonna give you a lot more. My Lucid Air Touring, it is hands down the best car I've ever owned. It's incredibly luxurious and quiet. It rides really smooth. My wife really likes to ride in a car. She won't drive it yet, but she loves to sit on the passenger side and ride with me. I knew what I was getting into with this car too, and that there's going to be a lot of stairs and people are going to say stuff to you. In fact, the other day I was coming out of Walgreens, and this brother pulled into the parking lot, blocked all the rest of the traffic coming into Walgreens, just so he could say to me, "Hey man, how you like that Lucid Air?" And he, I responded to him, and I got in the car. He went and parked, and I hadn't pulled out yet, and so he was walking into the store, and as he passed by my car, gave me the thumbs up. So that kind of thing happens somewhat regularly. I knew that was gonna happen. I'm kind of more of a reserved, behind the scenes kind of cat, but I knew what I was in for, so I'm cool with it. And it also, it charges fast at an EA DC fast charger when it works right. Yeah, this is a great car, and it's the best car I've ever had, and I am so glad that I decided to purchase a Lucid Air. So like I said already, the car rides really smooth. It comes with 3 curated drive modes: smooth, swift, and sprint. Smooth is going to be kind of your more comfort mode. Swift gives you a little bit more handling around curves. When you press down on the accelerator, it has more punch. But I think the actual horsepower is relatively the same between smooth and swift, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong about that. Then you have sprint mode, and that's the mode where you have access to all the horsepower. It's incredibly agile. It's a little bit more of a sports sedan, whereas smooth is more of a luxury sedan. So this is actually a car that kind of has multiple personalities, like Marquise Brownlee stated in one of his videos. It really does kind of have different personalities depending on the mode you put it in. It has these blind spot cameras that come up when you turn your signals left and right. They're placed right on the dash, so they're in your line of sight. If you put the left turn signal on, the left blind spot camera comes up kind of right in your line of sight. Same thing if you turn on the right turn signal. And another thing that I guess I'll mention is the highway assist actually works pretty good. It only works on highways now. The hope is that in the future, Lucid will continue to expand upon that, and you'll be able to use that kind of driver assistance on surface streets. And there's supposed to be traffic jam assist coming in the future. Right now, you just have highway assist, and that works pretty well. It has a little bit of trouble, in my experience, with curves at high speeds. Other than that, it works really, really well. I really love the look of the Lucid Air from the outside. I know some people don't, and that's why you have different kind of cars, different strokes for different folks. Some of the things I really love about it is the storage in the car. Like a lot of, I was almost gonna say like a lot of EVs, but like some EVs, there's a frunk and a trunk. And this car, with Lucid's space concept, you have this really large frunk space, in addition to a lot of trunk space as well. And combined, you just have a lot of storage space. Both the frunk and the trunk have these false floors that you can remove, and then you have these deep, cavernous wells that you can put a lot more stuff in. And so, I use the frunk a lot. And I think one of the reasons why is because Lucid's frunk not only is big and has a lot of space, but it's also a powered frunk. So I can press a button on the touchscreen to my left, or I can touch a button on my pilot panel. I can use my Apple Watch. I can use my mobile app, all of those to open the front trunk. In fact, I go to Target, and instead of popping up my trunk, I'll pop up the frunk and let them put, the bags in there. It's because it's powered, because it has a lot of space, I use it a lot. I use my trunk as well. It just depends on, if I'm coming out of a store and I'm approaching my car from the front, I'll put stuff in the front. It just depends. And so having that kind of space in my car really comes in handy. Inside the Lucid Air is amazing. The glass roof is amazing. And I know that there's probably going to be some people who just absolutely don't want a glass roof. I was in the camp that really wanted a glass roof. And I know at the Touring, it was an upgrade, but it was something I really wanted. And I'm glad that I got it. It's just the amount of space and the airiness that you feel is incredible. And it's just something to be able to look up and see the sky through your roof. The interior design, it feels to me like it's a car that was designed by an interior designer. The darker colors in the front, the lighter colors in the back, the material selection, the placement of Alcantara, the placement of leather, the open pore wood, all of those things, just the way that it all comes together, it feels like it was an actual interior designer that put this interior together. And it just makes it feel so luxurious. And then it's so spacious in there. One of my sons, whenever he gets in the car in the back, he's always remarking about, man, I keep forgetting how much space there is in this car. And he just gets in the back there and is able to just kind of relax because he has so much space. And then the ambient lighting, man, is just, it's perfect for me. I kind of mentioned earlier, I'm a little bit more of a reserved guy. I'm not an out front type of guy, and I don't like things to feel like they're overdone. And I feel like Lucid, when it comes to ambient lighting, they really just got it right, where it provides atmosphere and mood, but it's not overdone. And so, one thing I think I would like is to have even more options of color schemes that I could choose from. But what they've provided, at least in this first launch, has been something that I really, really appreciate. One of the benefits that I couldn't wait to experience when I switched to an electric vehicle was over-the-air updates. And since I have had my Lucid Air, Lucid hasn't disappointed. I've gotten several over-the-air updates, and it's been a fairly regular cadence. But two of the bigger things that I've gotten through an OTA update is, one was CarPlay. It's so funny to me because I've been on the forums and on Twitter watching and listening to people talking. Everybody wanted CarPlay and wondering, when is it coming? And then I get my car, and within 2 weeks, CarPlay is delivered. Send a message to my wife.
What do you want to say?
Good morning.
It says, good morning. Send it.
Change it.
What do you want to say instead?
Good morning from CarPlay in my Lucid.
It says, good morning from CarPlay in my Lucid. Send it.
Yes. See, to be honest with you, I had never even used CarPlay. I kind of wanted it and I wanted to see what it was like, but I had never used it. And now I use it every day. It's probably one of the biggest things that I use in my car all the time. And then another one that came was an enhancement to the highway assist, where lane changing was smoother. And that was immediately noticeable. And I mentioned earlier, the highway assist works great, and it's continually improving. Another thing that I really love about the car are the cameras. I mentioned the blind spot cameras earlier, but it also has these, front and rear camera, and it has this surround view camera that is absolutely amazing. I use that camera all the time when I'm parking. In fact, if you look at me from the outside, you'll see me parking and my head is down. That's because I'm looking at the camera to see where I am, how far away I am from objects, am I lined up straight? It works great, and I use it all the time. Another thing that I really love is Homelink. It's geofenced to my home. So as I'm approaching my home, the Homelink drops down, and I have two things I have to click. One is for the outside gate, and then one is for my garage. And so I can press them both. My garage is fairly close to the gate, and my gate opens and my garage opens, and it works great. And the same thing, when I'm backing out and I'm getting ready to leave, I bring down Homelink and I press both my garage to close my garage and press the gate to open the gate, and there I go. And I'll mention a little bit later some things that actually could be improved about that, but Homelink itself works great. The 4-zone climate control works great in this car. For the driver, the front passenger, and the left and right rear passengers all can control their own climate. My wife and I are empty nesters. We rarely have people in the rear, but for both of us, we can control our climate to our own liking, and it works great. And the other thing is the ventilated seats. So I was a little bit nervous about the ventilated seats because in our existing car, we have the cooled seats and it works really, really well. And I just wasn't sure what these ventilated seats were gonna be all about. I will say that they actually work really well. When I turn them on, I can just feel this ventilation really from my backside and my legs and my back. So I actually think they work really well. They work differently. I don't know all the technically how they are really, really different from cooled seats, but they actually work really well. Having physical controls for a few things that you do all the time is really great. So having control for the temperature, for the fan, and the little roly ball for the volume, it works really well. I use all of those all the time, along with the physical controls on the steering wheel. All of that together really works well. And also having the vents that you can kind of move manually. I know in some cars, it's all controlled by software, when I originally I thought, man, I wish Lucid was going to have it controlled by software as well. But as I've kind of been driving the car and I can move the vents with my hands, it really feels like I can be a little bit more precise about where I want the air to flow. So I actually really like it now. Having Alexa integration built into the car is actually really great. It's not something that I use all the time, but when I use it, it actually works really well. For example, just the other day, somebody's headlights were shining through the rear window pretty bright, and I didn't feel like hunting around for the button to pull up the rear shade, so I just asked Alexa to do it, and it pulled up the rear shade. And then when I got to where those lights weren't behind me anymore, I just asked Alexa to lower the rear shade. It worked well.
Hey Alexa, raise the rear sunshade.
Okay.
Hey Alexa, lower the rear sunshade.
Okay.
In my home, we have several things that are controlled by Alexa. So, for example, our living room lights are controlled by Alexa. I can turn them on and off. So when I'm approaching my home at night, I can, from my car, ask Alexa to turn on our living room lights so that when we walk into the home, the lights are on.
Hey Alexa, turn on the living room lamps.
It actually works extremely well, and there's a lot of things that you can do in the car. I think I posted a video once before showing how I turned on the front defroster using Alexa and turned it off as well.
Hey Alexa, turn on the front defroster.
Okay.
Hey Alexa, turn off the front defroster.
Okay.
So, it all works well, and it's just something that is there in case you need it. And obviously with CarPlay, then you also have access to Siri. And so from my car, I use Siri to send messages, to read my messages, to make calls, to play different playlists and do, a number of different things that you can do through CarPlay. But then having Alexa, I can also, since my home is controlled by Alexa, and since the in-car controls are controlled by Alexa, I can do a lot of those things just using my voice while I'm driving and don't have to worry about figuring out where a button is. The infotainment software in my Lucid is actually pretty good, and I know it has come a long way from the first version. I followed on Twitter and on the Lucid Owners Forum and heard all of the complaints that people had. But by the time I got my Lucid, it was already on version 2, which was basically a full rewrite. And this version is a lot more responsive. It has the instant on feature where it's already on when you get into the car. And the Lucid software is actually pretty intuitive. So I actually think overall it works pretty well. Now I'll mention some things later on about improvements that I think can be made, but overall it works pretty good. And some of the things that you hear nowadays actually aren't applicable to this version of the software. They're more applicable to the previous version. Another thing that I really love, and I mentioned this earlier too, was having CarPlay in my car. I really love having this wirelessly connected into my car. Now, there are some things that can even be improved there, and I'll mention about those later. But overall, CarPlay works pretty well. The sound system in my Lucid Air is absolutely amazing, especially when you're listening to Dolby Atmos, but it sounds amazing listening to any kind of music. I'm a film composer and I listen to a lot of my own music, but I listen to a lot of other film music. I listen to a lot of Christian music, a lot of jazz, hop, instrumental music, and it all sounds great in my car. But that Dolby Atmos, man, it is out of this world. And sometimes I find myself just sitting in my car when I've come home and take a few minutes just to sit there and listen to music because it's just absolutely amazing. So yeah, I really love my Lucid Air. It is hands down the best car I've ever had. There's no question about that. But that doesn't mean there aren't things that can't be improved. So one of those things is how efficient the car is in city driving. I mean, it's called a touring or a grand touring for a reason. It's kind of, built to be on the road, on the highway and getting incredible efficiency that way. I live in Los Angeles or a near suburb of Los Angeles. And so, driving around LA on these streets, I haven't really seen the efficiency that I was hoping to see. Now, I'm sure part of that is just me learning how to drive an EV and really learning how to use one pedal driving. But up to this point, I think my car is averaging 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour. I was hoping for 3.5 or 3.6 in city driving. And so, I'm sure as I continually learn to drive better, I'll maybe get better efficiency. But, I thought I would mention that anyways, that even at this point, I was still hoping to be getting a little bit better efficiency in city driving. And then another thing, and I had heard about this from different reviews that I saw, and that was that you do get a little bit of wind noise through the driver's side window. And at first it didn't bother me as much, but after a few months, it does kind of bother me a little bit that I hear that wind noise. And it's not loud or anything, but it does kind of bother me that there is some kind of wind noise coming in through the driver's side window. So like I said before, I really love having CarPlay in my car, and I use it every day. However, one thing that happens far too often is when you get into the car after the car's been asleep, it'll connect to my phone just fine and CarPlay will appear to be up and running fine. But then I'll go to play music and it starts and then stops right away. I try to play it again, it starts and stops right away. And the only way I can seem to get around that is to disconnect my phone from CarPlay and then reconnect it again. And then when it connects, then I can play music fine. Okay, so I'm getting in the car again for the first time after the car has been asleep for a while. And I was playing some music from Apple Music via CarPlay. So now it popped up, it connected fine, but when I go to play, it won't play the music. And so the only way that I know around this is to go to connectivity, disconnect, and then reconnect. Eventually it'll connect back up, and now it'll play. I can seem to use maps and other aspects of CarPlay, but playing music has this issue. So one thing that's really cool about the Lucid Air, and I'm sure this is the same with many other vehicles, is that you can use your phone as a mobile key. I can also use my Apple Watch to open the door or open the frunk and different things like that. But one thing that gets annoying is that using your phone to interact with your car, or if you need to use your mobile app to wake up your vehicle, waking up the car takes 30 seconds or more. And so I really would like to see if we could get that down a little bit. I mentioned you can use your phone as your mobile key, But what happens sometimes is you'll approach the car and the door handles are supposed to pop out, letting you know that it's detected your key and you can now enter the car. But sometimes they don't pop out, and it's like it's not detecting your mobile key at all. And then you either have to kind of press the handles, or I've even noticed that you can sometimes shake your phone and then it'll detect your phone that way. It doesn't happen all that often, but the fact that it does happen is kind of annoying. And then let's say I've gotten in the car, detected my key, I open the door, I get in the car, and everything is fine. Every now and then I'll get a message on the dash letting me know that it doesn't detect my key. And I've used the key to get in the car. So that, it doesn't happen all that often, but the fact that it does happen is, again, something that could really be improved. And then with Homelink, it works great. However, in order for me to use Homelink when I'm leaving my home, I have to close the camera that's on the glass cockpit, and then I have to click the top menu. Sometimes that menu is not on Homelink, so then I have to click Homelink. Then I can click the garage. So it's several clicks in order to use Homelink, and in order to use it, I have to close the camera. And so there really should be a way that I can use Homelink without so many clicks and without losing the camera that's on the glass cockpit. So when you're taking delivery of the car, the person that's helping you through this process helps you set up your profile on the car. I set up mine so that it would recognize my face and load my profile. It scanned my face. And then eventually we set up my wife's profile. So we have two profiles on the car. Both of them have face scans, and both of them are configured to load the appropriate profile when it detects your face. However, I have yet to get that to work. It seems like if my wife uses her key to get into the car and I was previously in the car, it still has my profile loaded, or vice versa. So I fully expected it to, when you get in the car, it would detect your face and then it would automatically load your profile. But it doesn't work that way. At least hasn't worked that way for me. So I feel like that is something that really didn't meet my expectation. And then sometimes while I'm driving, and it seems to happen maybe a little bit more when I'm wearing sunglasses, it tells me that I need to watch the road, even though I'm looking straight ahead. So I don't know what it is about that, but you can be looking straight ahead and not looking off to the side, and it can still think that you're not looking at the road. And then also sometimes what happens is I'll get in the car and I can tell that it's trying to scan my face because it puts up a red X on the dashboard, which kind of indicates to me that it can't detect my face. I can put my face like right into the steering wheel so it can see my face, but yet it still gives me a red X. And so, I'm not sure what's going on there. And then I guess the last thing that I'll mention in this segment is my wife really can't stand the sound of the glove box when you open it. She feels like it's just way too clunky for a car that costs this much. So these are some of the things that I really, really don't like. The first one is scheduled charging. So I remember when this got delivered to cars via an OTA update, and this is before I got the car, and I just thought, man, this is one of the things on my list. I'm so glad now that we have scheduled charging. So when I got the car, I was just expecting to be able to say, between a start hour and an end hour, you can charge, and I could set that window. But all you have is a 12-hour window. You can't say between 12 and 5. All you can say is when is the time that basically the car should allow charging. And once it hits that time, it's a 12-hour window. And I just don't understand it. In fact, it took me a while to kind of get it set up because I couldn't wrap my head around how this was working. Lucid says it has scheduled charging, but to me, it really, really doesn't. I'm not the biggest fan of the built-in nav. I think it's really good if you're on a long road trip and you need EV charging built into your route planning. But for just driving around LA, I don't need that. And so its drawbacks prevent me from using it daily. I think the main thing I don't like about the built-in nav is the voice prompting. For example, it'll say, turn left here or turn right here, and you're actually 3 blocks away from where you need to turn. Or it'll say, turn left in 1,000 feet, whereas Apple Maps says, go past this light, and at the next light, turn left. I also think the route planning is not the most optimal. I know when I got the car, one of the first things I did is I entered a route for some location in Burbank. It's a location I'm very familiar with. I know how to get there efficiently. Apple Maps gives me a route that's really efficient. But when I entered the route in the built-in nav, it gave me a route that was incredibly inefficient. And from that day, I just haven't used it very regularly. I will say though that the built-in nav does look better in my car than Apple Maps. It takes up the whole glass cockpit, and you can drag it between the glass cockpit and the pilot panel, whereas Apple Maps just fits into the CarPlay window. I actually tweeted Lucid Motors why I use Apple Maps over the built-in nav when I'm driving around LA. I mean, I really wish they would have used Apple Maps or Google Maps or even Waze. And I'm sure there's reasons why they didn't, but because they didn't, I don't really use it on a daily basis. Now, at the time that I'm doing this recording, I am waiting for a big over-the-air update to hit my car. This next update has several navigation improvements. So who knows, maybe by the next time I do my next big review, my opinion might change. And then CarPlay. I keep going back to CarPlay because I really like CarPlay and I really like how it works in my Lucid Air. But one thing about it that I can't stand is if you need to search for something by typing. Searching for a destination or whatever you want to search for using your voice works great. But if you have to type, you can only use a small window on the glass cockpit. And then if you have more than one result, it's really hard or cumbersome to scroll through those results. That's, to me, just a really poor implementation. I don't know if that's Lucid or CarPlay itself, but from a user perspective, I really don't like that. And then a few more things that I really just don't like. And I'll start by saying I love having Tidal integrated into the car and being able to listen to Dolby Atmos music is unreal, and I already talked about that previously. However, the Tidal app in the car it's just bad. Let's say I'm using a playlist, I'm playing some songs, and then I get out the car. I come back later to get in the car. Basically, it leaves off on the song that it was playing, but now it doesn't realize that it was in a playlist. All right, so yeah, I'm just getting in the car for the first time after being asleep for a while. And I was playing Tidal the last time that I was in the car. So I go to the music app here, and this is the song that I left off on. And you'll see there's no skip button. And that's because it now doesn't remember that it was playing a playlist. It remembered this song, but not the fact that it was in a playlist. So what I have to do every time is start the playlist again, and then the playlist is going to start with the first song in the playlist every single time, and it doesn't start in shuffle mode. So then I put it in the shuffle mode. If I can get this to work, there we go. And then it'll be in shuffle mode now, so when I skip through songs, there'll be different songs. But that is the process every time I get into the car when I was playing Tidal the previous time that I was driving the car. And so I just think while the music itself sounds awesome, the Tidal app is poor and needs to be re-implemented. Another thing about using Tidal, as well as this applies to Tidal or Spotify. Let's say you want to search for a song on an album, okay? You know the album, you're not sure what the name of the song is. So you want to go to the album and then just look at the songs on that album and be able to select the song. Let's say I'm searching for the Wakanda Forever soundtrack, that's the Dolby Atmos version. It's really hard sometimes to find that one. But let's say I find it and I say, man, there's this one song, I know it's something about whispers or something like that. I can't see the songs that are on that album and then just click that song. I have to basically find the album, click to play the album, and then I can just skip through all the songs until I get to the one that's the one I was looking for. All right, I'm gonna go to the music app here, and I'm gonna swipe down here and go to Tidal. All right, so
I'm gonna search for Wakanda Forever. And specifically, what I'm looking for here is the Wakanda Forever original score in Dolby Atmos. So if I just type Wakanda Forever, I do get original score, but it's not the Dolby Atmos version. And I do get another Wakanda Forever in Dolby Atmos, but it's not the original score. So if I just search through here, I don't see the original score in Dolby Atmos. So I gotta start typing a little bit more. Now I see the Wakanda Forever original score in Dolby Atmos. All right, but let's say I really want to start with a song from the album. And I know it has the word whisper in it, but I can't really remember the name of the song. So what I really want to do is click on the album, let it show me the list of songs on the album, and then click that one song, and let's start with that. But when I go ahead and click the album, no songs show up here. And in fact, it shows up here and it's basically starting to play the album. So there's no way to search for songs on the album. So I just basically, once it starts playing, have to click through and say, okay, that's the one I wanted to listen to. We know what you whispered.
So it's just, I don't know, it's just really annoying trying to find a song that's on an album or find a song that's on a playlist. And then I put this last because this is probably one of the top things that I really dislike about my car. And that is, there is no concept of a valet mode or valet card or anything like that. In my car, you know, I've integrated it with Alexa. It's something that comes built into the car and it works great. You know, I can use Alexa to do all kinds of things, including I can read my notifications. I can turn on my lights in my house. If I wanted to, I could order something off of Alexa while I'm driving down the street. But there's no way to say, I want to put my car in valet mode. So whoever is going to get into this car, they can drive it, but they can't interact with services that are set up in my car, and they can't get into my glove box. There's no way to set that up. So if I give a valet driver access to my car, they basically have full access to my car. And, you know, it's maybe far-fetched, but I don't really think it is. You know, somebody could be in my car and order something off of Alexa. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. You know, they could check my order history, right? There's nothing stopping them from doing that. And there's no way in my car to, you know, cut that off. So as a result, I don't really like to valet park my car. And in fact, I've had it for 3 months now. I've only went to one restaurant where I let them valet park my car. I'm just too nervous about that. My car has been running great since I got it. It hasn't had any major problems at all. It has, however, had to go into service 2 times for some minor issues. The first one was for the charge port door. At one point when it went to close, it kind of got stuck. And then it wouldn't close all the way. It left a little bit of a gap. And, you know, which probably wasn't that big of a deal, but it's a new car, it's an expensive car. I wanted to get that addressed, so I brought that into service, and they did a few minor adjustments and got it back to what it was when I first got the car. The other thing that happened was I started to hear a little squeak in the trunk when it would open and close. So I had to bring it in for that, and they put some kind of, I don't know, some ointment or something on the trunk, and that took care of the squeak. Those are the only 2 things that I've had to bring my car in for service. Other than that, it's been running smooth. I guess a handful of things that are also worth mentioning is I remember hearing a lot about the cup holders when the car first came out, but in my experience, they actually have worked pretty well. Most of the cups that I have been able to fit into the cup holders. They do kind of block the pilot panel, but it's fine. So that hasn't been an issue for me at all. Then the last thing that I'll mention here is just owning an EV. One of the beauties that you get with an EV is not just the fact that, you know, charging is less expensive than gas, but I've just really enjoyed being able to have a charger installed in my home, and I have no problem charging at night. I plug it in when I'm done for the night. I'm going to be at home, and then I get up in the morning and it's charged. And so that aspect of owning an EV, I just can't say enough about how great that experience is. So I've come up with a wish list of things that I would love for Lucid to address that for me are higher priority. Lucid, if you're listening, here is my wish list. Support for native Apple Music. It has way more content than Tidal, and it has Dolby Atmos support. You can't use Dolby Atmos through CarPlay, but if we had native Apple Music support, just like we do Tidal and Spotify, then I could use Dolby Atmos. I already am a Apple fanboy, so I pay for Apple Music and amongst other Apple services, and so I wouldn't have to pay extra for Tidal to just get Dolby Atmos music. I would really like some kind of a equivalent to Tesla's Sentry Mode. I've interviewed some other Tesla owners and they say Sentry Mode is great, but it does kind of drain your battery. I would like to have that in my car and be able to make that decision, do I want to use it or not? Scratch the scheduled charging that we have in there now and rebuild that capability. I don't even call it scheduled charging. Actually give us real scheduled charging. Again, I gave a bullet list of reasons why I don't use the nav system when I'm just driving around the city. I really would love to use the built-in nav system, but Apple Maps works much better. And so, give me something that is equivalent to Apple Maps or give me Apple Maps. Keep the main clock on the screen even when you have CarPlay, even when you're using CarPlay. So when you're not using CarPlay, there's a clock that sits on the right side of the glass cockpit, and it's easy to see. But when you go into CarPlay, that clock disappears and you use the clock that's in the CarPlay window. It's extremely small and you can't just glance. You have to actually look to see the time. And when you're driving, I don't want to have to look to see the time. I just want to be able to glance so I can just easily keep my eyes on the road. And so I would love for that to change. These aren't in any order of priority. These are just my list. So even though this is number 6, this is probably a higher priority for me than the others. But that is to be able to use apps on the right side of the glass cockpit and the pilot panel independently. So for example, being able to run, let's just say maps on the top window and being able to put the nav on the pilot panel. If I'm using the nav system, then it takes over the right glass cockpit window. I can take the window and drag it down to the pilot panel. That's all great. But then if I switch to music, the nav goes away. It's still working, it's still running, but it's not on any window. I can't have them both at the same time. All right, I'm gonna start here by going to the nav, and I'm gonna search for some charging for Electrify America close by, and we'll navigate there. All right, so you see I have navigation down here on the pilot panel, on the right side of the glass cockpit, and I have it on the right side of the dash as well. That's all good. So now let's say I want to switch over to music. I hit music here, and as you can see, then the navigation goes away from the pilot panel and the right side of the glass cockpit. I still have it on the right side of the dash, but not on these other screens over here. I can use music on both screens, but I can't use the nav and the nav and the music on both of these screens. So if I want to switch back to the nav, I have to go back to the nav app, but then I don't have music anymore. We really need some kind of a valet mode or valet card for the Lucid Air. Right now, all we have is an NFC card. It's just another way to get into your car, and if it doesn't recognize you, it'll require you to enter a PIN. But once you enter that PIN, you have full access to the car. So we need some way to put it in valet mode so that you can lock the glove box, you can lock the frunk, and what's actually one of the biggest things that's important to me is whoever is driving the car, if I put it in valet mode, they shouldn't have access to things like Alexa. That to me is really a big security hole, and that really needs to be closed by Lucid. The last item on my wish list is just for the software to not be as glitchy. I know Lucid is a newer company, I know this is their first car, and I knew what I was getting into. But if I'm making a wish list, yeah, this is gonna be on there. Now I know the software's come a long way from version 1 to version 2, and Lucid is continually providing OTA updates, and the software is improving and improving and improving and getting better. But at this point in time, there are still too many glitches for me. So it's on my wish list. I'll wrap up by saying again that I absolutely love my car. It is hands down the best automobile that I have ever owned. I look forward to driving this car anytime I can. And after 3 months, I'm still sometimes taking the long way just so I can drive my car. And I look forward to every OTA that comes. In fact, while I'm recording my 3-month review, I'm waiting on OTA 2.1.2. It has several things in it that I can't wait to use. And it's just so exciting to see my car get these updates and get better and better over time. It is one of the big reasons why I wanted to switch to electric. One thing I did want to say is, while I do love my car, and I'm a huge backer of Lucid Motors, I think they create the most advanced powertrain and battery technology, and with their space concept, it's just unbelievable. And I'm looking forward to future automobiles that I'm not even interested in myself, but things like the Gravity. I'm really curious what it's gonna look like. So I'm a huge fan and believer in Lucid Motors, but at the same time, I'm a little disappointed in the CEO, Peter Rawlinson. And don't get me wrong, I think he's a brilliant man. He is, has spearheaded all of this design at Lucid, along with others. I guess the one thing is I just can't connect with this dude. I remember watching this interview with Marcus Brownlee and the CEO from Rivian. And they were sitting in a Rivian SUV. And even though it was an interview, it felt more like they were just kind of shooting the breeze. And it was just an interesting, laid back conversation about the current vehicles, the direction of Rivian, and other things. And, I thought to myself, man, I really can't see Peter having that kind of laid back conversation and being willing to share, to that level about the direction of Lucid. That is one thing I guess I just wish we had in the CEO of Lucid. And if we had that kind of person, I think me individually, I would connect with him a little more. All right, well, this is my 3-month review. I know it was long, but I wanted to give you guys everything that was on my mind, both the good and the bad, and the things that are great and the things that can be improved. So I hope you get something out of this. The next big review that I do will probably be at 1 year. Until then, please subscribe to my channel and get all the content that I'm gonna put out there, and I'll catch you later. Oh my gosh. Okay. You have, yeah. Rolling. Take 2. Alexa integration. No, girl, I wasn't talking to you. It's something that I use, I wouldn't say all the time, but for example, I was driving down the street the other day, and what did I use Alexa? What did I use it for? I can't remember now. The rear shade. The infotainment software in my Lucid is actually pretty good. But by the time I got my Lucid, it was already on version 2, which was basically a complete rewrite. Why does my voice keep cracking? Rewrite.
That was a good thing.
Yeah. And then with Homelink, it works great. The connectivity, I cannot get this thing right, girl. Play on the, I'm not gonna play music, what all I gotta say? My wish list take 2. That rear their head.
Backing up.
What do you say?
Backing up.
I'm going crazy. One thing I do want to say, y'all. One thing, yo, what's up? And I'll see you later. I won't see any of y'all later.